Greta Gerwig and Christopher Nolan have united America, have united the world in ways that no one has in years.
Yes.
We did it. It's finally happened. Hello and welcome to another edition of Popcorn Bucket List. I almost feel bad, not to get too much into weather talk right now, but not only is it cool down here, but it's like chilly outside and you hear about some of the temperatures and everything. Is it summer? Like, did we miss a month? It's July, right?
It's July.
It's still July?
But it feels amazing.
It feels like fall.
Yes.
And then you look down south and it's like triple-digit temperature. I feel bad. I feel bad.
I don't.
I can't do anything.
I don't.
You don't?
I don't feel bad at all.
No sympathy.
No sympathy.
Why is that?
Because I like to live up here when we do have weird weather and when we have cold weather. People don't feel bad for us living in Minnesota in the winter.
True.
I don't feel bad for people living in the South during the summer.
That's true. But here's the thing. You know how many people have relatives down south that they go to during the winter when it's too cold up here? Invite those relatives up here. To your aunt and uncle who live in Phoenix who are sweating like so much right now. Invite them up here. Let them cool out. That's a nice little trade-off, I think, for people. So, speaking of trade-offs and negotiating and everything, one place where that is not occurring, Hollywood right now. The night is at its darkest just before the dawn. That is a reference to a movie we will be talking about later on here.
Great reference.
Thank you. I'm on it with the segues here today. I'm just on it right now.
That was good.
That's right. We're going to do a little bit, before we get into the opening spotlight, we're going to do another edition of Popcorn Bucket News here because we got some major updates in the Writer's Strike 2023. Now the Actors/Writer's Strike 2023. In case you don't remember, I believe May, was it? It was a couple months ago.
Yeah.
The writers officially enacted a strike, first time since 2008. And they had been on strike on the picket lines for the past few months. Well, now the Actors Union has joined them as well. This is the first time both unions have been on strike since 1960.
Ooh.
So we're experiencing a little bit of history here. The main question, how did we get here? How did we get to the point where not just one, but two separate unions, well, I say separate, but they're part of the same industry, are both striking? Well, a couple different factors. When it came to the writers especially, lower pay, less work because of streaming, because if you haven't noticed, when you look at a streaming show, very rarely does it go past like 10 episodes, as opposed to a network show, which can be 20, 23, 25 episodes. So there was less work. That was one thing. A huge report coming out right now, residuals are super, super low. Some of the numbers I'm hearing are like criminal.
Well, and some of them, you get no residuals at all.
Yeah.
You get nothing.
Yep. And now adding with the actors strike, another issue that's coming up is, and you've been hearing a lot about it in the news, artificial intelligence. Studios have been looking at ways of using this technology, and actors, not just the big ones, but especially the little guy, the extras. I just heard a report earlier today. One of the things studios was attempting to do was basically pay extras and actors for like one day's work, where they'd get enough of footage of them where they'd be able to basically use AI of that person for pretty much the future.
Things. Yeah.
So they'd only get one day's work and then they're done with them basically.
Yep.
That's one of the reports we're hearing for here. So I get probably some people are going to look at this and go, why should I care what these $1 million actors are striking for? What are they complaining about? Well, when you look at artificial intelligence and the stuff they are implying they may be using here, it's looking like they're kind of complaining about job security, which is something everyone should be worried about. But they are also doing this for the little guy, who especially is getting squashed here, not only in the actor's side, but the writer's side as well.
Yep. And it's more so standing in solidarity with the littler guys, because there is a lot of little guys. Hollywood has the stars, but they are made up of the little guys, and They're not looking too bright right now.
Next time you watch a movie, try and count how many people are just kind of in the background.
Yep.
And think about, like, all those people, like, every once in a while you get, like, these, it's kind of a day thing. People just kind of volunteer, come on, whatever sort of thing. Sometimes it's, you have to have, like, actual extras who know how to act if they're going to be a little bit closer to the camera. Yep. You can't just have Joe Schmo from off the street standing right next to Brad Pitt in the middle of a scene and hope that they don't screw it up for them or miss their mark.
And you can have Joe Schmo just tell him, pretend you're talking with somebody. Because if you ever watch somebody that's just pretending to talk, it doesn't look real. It doesn't look right.
Yeah, it looks weird. Now, I feel like some people may look at this and think, well, it's getting worse. For the past few weeks, this has been like a volcano kind of building up steam, bubbling over. I've actually been kind of looking forward to this. I was hoping it would go to this point because now there is way more power on the side of the writers against the studios, especially when you take into fact that last week, one of the executives that's representing the studios, it was leaked that their strategy, this is what they're saying, was they were basically just going to wait it out. They were going to wait until all the writers go broke, and then they would be forced to give in to their demands.
Yep.
That's not negotiating.
No.
That's dictatorship tactics. That's just a jerk move right there. And so now that the actors are alongside of them as well, and pretty much all productions have pretty much stopped at this point now.
Yeah.
The fighting, the turn of the tide has happened here. And this was kind of what I was, it sounds mean, I was hoping you would get to this point. Because I'm not saying the writers couldn't have won this on their own, but it would have been way tougher and way longer. I think now that the actors are striking along with it as well, and we're not just talking about they can no longer act in their things anymore. That means they can't promote new things that have already been completed.
Yep.
We saw this with the Oppenheimer premiere. It was premiering in London at the time the strike took in effect. So the cast walked out on the premiere.
Yep.
And Nolan supported them for that because that's what they're supposed to be doing right now. They're supposed to be in solidarity with the actors, and that means no promotion for movies. We have seen movies be made or broken based on promotion. Sometimes some movies, like, there's been some this summer that are like, we didn't even know that one was coming until, like, way too late. And then that movie suffered because of it. And now you're going to have a bunch of movies already made that aren't going to have any promotion. I just read earlier Blue Beetle. They won't be having any promotion now because of the strike.
And that's a huge turning point. It's just, it's going to be interesting. And especially if they're not able to come to an agreement sooner. Like, we've already seen the effects of the Tonight shows and the daily shows that aren't getting new episodes, just all reruns. How much longer is it going to be till more of your regular TV that people watch is just going to be completely reruns, nothing at all new?
Yep.
So it could get wild. It could get wild.
Yep. And so just so people know out there, some of the bigger productions that were in the middle of shooting but now are not, just so that we kind of know a little bit more of the grand scale here of what's going on. Here's just a few of them that I've seen. Deadpool 3, they were in middle production. They are no longer doing that anymore. Venom 3 has stopped production. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 2. Part 1 obviously premiered this weekend. They got right to work with Part 2. They've now stopped production on that. Gladiator 2, no more. Mortal Kombat 2, Fatality. Beetlejuice 2, halting production at this point. So we're gonna have to, it's gonna be a little bit here again, but I do believe with the writer's strike now, the timeline has been very much forced closer to present day as far as renegotiating and hopefully getting some traction going, especially for the writers and everything too. So that is that's everything that's going on there. Not a lot of it's very depressing sounding and everything. I will say that, but I find this as a positive. I don't know if that's just the optimist in me. We'll have to wait and see, though.
Yeah. Yep.
But let's move on to the opening spotlight. One of the movies premiering this weekend, Oppenheimer, Christopher Nolan's latest. I've said it before. I will say it again. Christopher Nolan may be one of my favorite working directors currently. So we thought we'd break it down here. What are some of our favorites? Now, we debated this earlier, and I've said this before, I think, too. I think there's two different arguments between best or favorite whenever you talk about a movie. These are our favorites. So we don't think these are because it sounds like a technicality, but honestly, I could make two separate lists here, depending on that word choice.
And especially, like, I might think this is a better all-in-all film, but I enjoy this one more. I would rather watch this one on a Tuesday night when I get home.
I think
from
that's
softball.
the better way to put. That's how I at least determine favorite. Is like I can look at two movies and go, this one's clearly better, but I'm gonna watch this one because I like it a little bit more.
Yeah,
like I feel like, just as an example, The Godfather. I think it's one of the best made movies of all time. It's pretty low on my list, though, however. There's a lot of movies I'd rather watch before it. So I think The Godfather is one of the better ones, but there's a bunch I would pick as favorite ones before it.
That's
just as an example.
That's a great way to put that.
So let's run them down here. Our top 5 Nolan. I'll kick us off on this one. My number 5 pick, I'm going with Memento.
Okay.
This was one of Christopher Nolan's first movies, really the one that really put him on the map. Because of the editing choices and the timeline of the movie. A lot of Christopher Nolan's movies, a big staple of it has been the telling the story out of order sort of thing. It started here, and I think it was done best in this movie. We say this every once in a while. Sometimes you have to watch a movie 2 times. You have to watch this movie 2 times to fully get the timeline and figure out exactly what's going on here. But once you really start getting the pattern, because it looks random almost, but there is a pattern to it. Once you kind of figure that out and start putting the story together, it's just mind-blowing. And it's so fun to watch. But I'm going to say that as my number 5.
Okay. I'm going with my number 5 with The Prestige. Now, I actually did not watch this film right away when it came out. I thought it was more like a magical thing, and I guess I didn't notice it right away. However, I watched it relatively soon after it came out on DVD, because I was a big DVD guy. Absolutely loved it. Obviously, Christian Bale and Hugh Jackman kind of lead this film together. Absolutely wonderful. If you like magic, or you like either of those two actors, or the female
Scarlett Johansson.
Scarlett Johansson, yeah, fantastic. Just a nice little trio. It was good. Good.
Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Let's take a short break to talk about the Marshall 6 Theater here in Marshall, Minnesota. July is a hot month, not only for outdoor temperatures, but also for blockbuster movies. So if you need a place to chill out, catch some entertainment, or both, the Marshall 6 Theater has exactly what you're looking for. So be sure to check out their website for showtimes on all of the movies they have available only at the Marshall 6 Theater here in Marshall, Minnesota.
Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
All right. Looking at 4th place, then let's just kind of keep bouncing back and forth. Why don't you take over for 4th place then? What's your next one?
For 4th place, I went ahead and went with Inception. Leonardo DiCaprio, the whole crew in here. Also future Bane, Tom Hardy. Awesome. The time travel, the question at the end, the dream travel, not time travel, dream travel.
That's actually a more accurate way to put that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You'd almost call it time travel, but that's actually a more accurate way to put that.
Yeah. Just a fun film. I really enjoyed it. It makes you question. That was my number 4.
I feel like that's kind of an upset. I feel like so many people would have that higher. Yeah. I'm curious what you have in your
I don't
final
think people
here.
like my final 3.
Now that you have that at 4, I'm really curious to see what else you got here going on. So I'll just say my number 4 pick then. I'm going to go with the one that started it all, if you will. Okay. Batman Begins.
Very
it's
good.
Pun. It wasn't a good one. Anyways, yeah, this brought Batman back to the cinemas. If you remember, teleport back with me back to 2005. Same year Prestige came out, by the way.
Yeah.
So 1-2 punch for Nolan.
Yep.
The last time Batman was on the big screen, Batman and Robin. No offense to George Clooney, but or Joel Schumacher, rest in peace. I don't want to speak ill of the dead, but Bat nipples and all that stuff, and Bat credit card. That was the last time people experienced Batman on the cinema.
Yep.
And then we followed it up with this thing, polar opposite take on The Dark Knight, and catapulted arguably one of the greatest trilogies of all time, the Batman trilogy.
Arguably.
I would argue it is.
And I would argue it's not.
Actually, no. I've always said Back to the Future. I think is the best trilogy of all time. That one's up there for me, but I know which one you're.
I would say Dark Knight trilogy is definitely one of the best trilogies of all time.
We don't. Well, that's a conversation for another day, maybe.
Yeah, another time.
I'll kick us off in third place, however, and I'm gonna say a quick story with this one. So. Back when I was really starting to fall in love with movies and everything, me and a friend of mine knew this movie was coming up, and we had it marked on our calendar months ahead of time. We're like, we're going to check this one out. Yep. We need to see this one. And the time came, and just because of the high school events we were a part of, we couldn't see it right away. A month goes by before we finally see this movie. We weren't happy about this. Trust me, it was a lot of circumstances that made it so we couldn't watch this one. So finally we get to it. We're going to the Marshall 6 Theater. It's in theater number 6 because it's been in the movie theater for like a month at this point. Hunger Games Part 1 is premiering, the final Hunger Games Part 1, whatever. And so we're sitting here thinking, great, we're going to have the whole theater to ourselves. No one else is going to be here. Like 1 or 2 older couples come in. And then like right before the movie started, a whole bunch of young couples came in because they couldn't get into Hunger Games. And I guess they already made the drive. So they were stuck watching this sci-fi movie with us. Yeah. And it blew our minds. Interstellar is in my top 3 here.
Very good.
If you look at it, there's a lot of scientific accuracy to it, and some of the stuff he talks about are theoretical science. So, like, it wasn't something scientists could disprove because we haven't gotten that far in science yet, but he kept it pretty accurate. And my friend was kind of a brainiac, so that really kept him interested. Me being a film lover, I was interested in the storytelling, so it was one of my favorite movie-going experiences, really. How about you? What's your number 3?
So for my number 3 pick, I'm actually going to throw it back a little bit. I'm going all the way back to Dunkirk. I love the way he tells 3 unique stories in this film, all through the 3 different lenses. Obviously, Tom Hardy was great flying the plane. Everybody else, their names are escaping me.
Harry Styles was in
Harry Styles, Cullen Murphy, Cillian Murphy.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of the.
It's spreading now. I can't think of the names either. Oh my God.
But no, I absolutely
Michael Caine.
Caine.
My voice.
Yep. Ewan McGregor. He's in there, isn't he?
Yeah. He's
like
either
the
him or
ship
Kenneth
captain
Branagh.
Something.
I think it's Kenneth Branagh.
Okay.
Although they look a lot alike, don't they?
And I haven't seen it now for a couple of years, but absolutely wonderful film. Cinematography is great. The stories are great. I also I'm a big fan of the war stuff. I like that on film. I think it looks cool. It can tell good stories. So, yeah, I would put Dunkirk up in my top 3.
We'll go more into this with Oppenheimer, but you can tell this was kind of one of the first steps of Nolan kind of taking a real life story. He was very much doing a lot of his own stories and his own writing, with one exception, Insomnia, which is a movie unfortunately didn't make my top 5, but pretty close.
Yep.
But this was one of the first times where he took a real life story. And what I love about him is he took stories that had huge impacts on history, but was not talked about enough.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you who don't know, Dunkirk was the small difference between, the Nazis maybe either winning World War II or not.
Yep.
It was that close.
Yeah.
Or at the very least, it would have been significantly harder.
Yeah.
For us to beat them at that point.
And the world would be nothing compared to what we know it is right now.
I can't even stress how close it was to a major catastrophe with this.
Yeah.
And I think Nolan nails a lot of that tension. Moving on to my number 2. Actually, no, I have you marked down here. What do you keep it going here? What's your number 2?
All right, my number 2, I'm going to keep it short because it may make appearance later on this film. I went with The Dark Knight. Absolutely powerful movie. Like you said, with Batman Begins, he really brought the superhero into the theaters for like the first time, like I would say a more serious superhero, which kind of almost led the way for Marvel. But Batman was so good. Heath Ledger's The Joker was so good. There's so many great characters and just a great story in general that this film was huge. I remember working at the theater when this happened. It was just awesome. Wonderful film.
My number 2, Inception. Yep. It's like The Dark Knight and Inception are the 2 movies that every time you see a trailer that's a Christopher Nolan movie, it's from the director of these 2 movies.
Yep.
Every time. Why? Because these 2 were some of the biggest box office winners. They were the best critical winners at the time.
Yep.
I mean, if you picture, it was like it went from Dark Knight, and then a couple of years later it was Inception. This guy could do no wrong.
Yep.
In a weird way, that was almost his worst thing, because that kind of hurt Dark Knight Rises, I feel like. Because, I mean, when you make 2 of the... I mean, these are both, I think, in like the top 50, like IMDb, both in the AFI top 100s, like greatest movies of all time. And you kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier when you talked about Inception, the ending. I watched that movie, and every time I watch it, I think a little bit differently.
Yep.
Like there's kind of a question at the end there. Is it, and without spoiling it, is it this or is it this? And I have changed my mind pretty much every time as to what camp I land in, to be completely honest, because the movie does such a good job of supporting both possible answers, really. With that, let's move into our number 1 favorite Christopher Nolan movie of all time. For those of you who know me at all, you probably already knew this one, so I'm not going to get too much into it. This list was basically a race for second place for me.
Yeah.
The Dark Knight. The only thing I will say is something you kind of alluded to, which was that it made people start looking at comic book movies seriously. It was the movie that made me started to watch movies seriously in general. Before, I was just a young, stupid kid who's like, oh, hey, a movie, let's just pop it on, watch it. All right, we don't have to think about it anymore. Yeah. It just, watching it, and I was just like, there's just something different here. There's just something about it that was making me think more, and I just kept rewatching it, and I didn't even realize it, that I just kept rewatching it and rewatching it within like that 1 week I finally saw it. And I didn't even see it in theaters. I didn't even see it on DVD.
Oh.
It was on TNT, and my dad happened to record it, and I started watching it without him one day and watched it like 3 more times within that week.
Yeah.
And then it was at that point that I realized, oh, you can actually think about movies and talk about them, and they can have a little bit more of an impact on you. So not only is that my favorite Nolan movie, that's one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah.
So no surprise there, but so that's why I wanted to end on yours.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what is your number 1 favorite Christopher Nolan movie?
Right now, this is probably a really hot take, but I'm going with Tenet. I know a lot of people didn't like this movie when it first came out. I think some of the reason why I love this film, not only I love the 2 main actors, they're fantastic. I think some of the fighting sequences, when they actually play it backwards, before you know that everything's backwards, it has a cool look to it that I think is very unique. I do believe the soundtrack in the theater is weird and wacky, and it was supposed to be that way for a reason. I also am one of the people that really look into, why are you filming with this aspect ratio? Why are you doing this? What are you trying to say? And also, like, he was a huge proponent of, no, this movie will be watched in a movie theater. I'm not going to release it on whatever home streaming services for at least, X amount of time. Like, that was a huge thing for me, and I think some of it was just because his love for film, I can kind of see that in this film, and it just, like, the whole storytelling backwards and just how it all worked, I really enjoyed it. And that was one thing. I saw it probably 2 times, maybe 3 times in the movie theater, and I've seen it now on TV before, or home services or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's good. I really liked it. I know it's controversial, but
it's an interesting take, like you said. But I want to talk about this movie a little bit here, because I think one of the reasons why it is such an interesting take is because it is really, if you look at it on the surface, it's a pretty fantastic movie.
It is. And the beginning, the very first scene of the movie is the very last scene of the movie, which is just awesome, which is very cool to think about. And I've spent hours thinking that's, like, right when we watched it, how did that work? And then, oh yeah, that's right. And then you think you come up with a plot hole, and then it's like, oh no, they talked about that there. It kind of did that. And then it just, I love that about it.
But I will also say this was the movie that showed the cracks in the armor that is Christopher Nolan. I've said before, I love this director. I love everything he does. But like you mentioned, the audio was weird in this movie.
Weird.
Like, it drowned out dialogue. But at the same time, because I remember talking about this movie to someone, like, well, do you recommend it? I'm like, yes. But I would say, going in as a warning, when they try to explain how the technology or how things work, when they're trying to, like, talk about it, don't even listen to it. In fact, you really can't listen to it, if I'm going to be honest. It's hard to hear it.
Yeah.
But when they show how it works, I was watching it and going, oh, I get it now. I get it. And he's such a good visual storyteller.
Yes.
His cracks in the armor is his story hasn't been the best in some cases. If you look back, there are a few exceptions to that rule, but a lot of times it is, I'm going to play with time here. Time is a rubber band to him. He bends it, stretches it, folds it however he wants, and yet it still works.
Yep.
And the amount of thought he goes into these. But it is a hot take why it would be a number 1 favorite, because he has so many other great movies. If this movie was almost any other, if this was 95% of the other directors working right now movie, this would be their number 1.
Yeah.
Hands down. Not even close. Yeah. I would kill to be not... I probably okay. Whoa. My lawyer has informed me I shouldn't have said that. Don't look into that. To make a movie this good and everything, or this smart and everything. So it's interesting. This was the first movie I think I left saying to a Christopher Nolan movie, I just really liked it. Every other one I've seen before that, I loved. Even Dark Knight Rises, when I left seeing it, I loved it. Later on, I just really liked it. Leaving the theater, this is the first one I was like, I can only say I really liked it, which is more than I could say for a lot of movies that came out that year.
Yeah.
Especially.
And I think some of it, too, was this was a chance to see Edward Cullen.
Yeah. Robert Pattinson.
Robert Pattinson as more of a I would say on a bigger stage as a more serious actor than Twilight.
Because he had been in a lot of serious movies, but not to the huge public. Yes. Do you think this helped him not get the Batman? Because he was... Did I tell you that funny story? So there was a funny story that came out of behind the scenes from Tenet here, where he was auditioning or doing a screen test for the Batman, but he wasn't allowed to tell anyone. So he had to make up some excuse because he was filming Tenet at this time. So he kind of like went up to Christopher Nolan. He's like, hey, tomorrow, can I have, I need to have off. And he came up, I can't remember what the excuse was, but he said like some excuse or whatever. And Christopher Nolan kind of looks at him and goes, you're auditioning for the Batman, aren't you? And Robertson was like, yeah, I am. But like at the same time, like he couldn't tell people he was working on Tenet, and like he also couldn't tell people he was working on the Batman. But Nolan just like, I don't know how he knew. I don't know how. He's just I don't know, had his claws in the industry. I don't know, but I think it's. I still think you bring up a good point. Do we think it made it easier for us to accept him as Batman because of this movie?
I would say yes, strictly on a good majority of people haven't seen Robert Pattinson in those serious indie film roles. And if you have seen those, you know he's a phenomenal actor. But if you haven't seen those, you got,
Yeah. I never thought of it that way. This movie did kind of start laying those stones out for him to because now picture in an alternate timeline, Tenet doesn't come out. And for a lot of people, because to be honest, a lot of people didn't see Tenet because of the COVID, and it didn't reach as big of an audience as it should have been. And then in an alternate timeline, for a lot of people, this is the first time people see Robert Pattinson since Twilight, probably.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if the Batman does as well as it would have done.
Yeah.
When you think about it,
yeah.
Even though Nolan and Warner Brothers are kind of at war right now, he gave him one last parting gift with Tenet. Hey, we talk a lot about movies on this channel, but sometimes the ones we talk about aren't the most accessible. That's where the Marshall-Lyon County Library comes in handy. They have a great collection of physical media, as well as a couple of online services with many, many options for movies, TV shows, and documentaries. It's easy. Just get your own library card at the Marshall-Lyon County Library and gain access to their large variety of movies, TV shows, and of course, books. Also, be sure to check back every month as we here at Popcorn Bucket List make specific movie recommendations based on a monthly theme. This month, we celebrate the US of A with the most patriotic movies. So head on over to the Marshall-Lyon County Library for some of our favorites and check out the channel to get even more movie recommendations. And now, on with the show! Let's move on to the weekly preview then. A lot to talk about here this week. By the time this video comes out, one of these movies will already be out Wednesday, July 19th on Netflix, The Deepest Breath. This is a documentary about the sport of free diving. Now, I've not heard of this before, but you've seen stuff like this.
Heard of the movie or heard of the sport?
The sport, I should say. Basically, it's people compete to see who can go the deepest underwater by holding their breath. Like, they don't have scuba gear, none of that.
Nothing, yeah.
It's basically the game you played as kids, is just who could stay underwater the longest.
Yeah.
But there's a whole other element of danger here, because not only do you have to go all the way farther down, but you have to keep into account that you have to go all the way back up.
Yep, and that comes into a lot of the pressure that gets applied to the body and the blood.
Literally.
And epoxy, I don't think what it is. I don't remember what the official name, but like the blood it does some weird stuff. Yeah, and it's very dangerous. Very dangerous if you don't have good safety team, if you're not trained on how to do this. Like, there's a lot of safety that goes into it. And unfortunately, I think people have passed. Well, I know people have passed away, but I think this might be more towards a little intro to the sport, and then one very famous free diver.
The story follows Alicia Zikanaki. Oh God, I butchered that last name. I apologize to that family. I'm not even gonna try that again. Google it. All right, don't make me a fool. Just look it up yourselves. Basically, she's already kind of been in this free diving world a little bit, but now she's gotten a hold of a famous trainer. She wants to break the record. Yep. She not only wants to break the overall record, but she wants to basically be the female that has gone the deepest of anyone, and break the glass ceiling by going down, if you will.
I like that.
Going the opposite direction there, but same effect, if you will. How long do you think you could hold your breath underwater? I think I've gone like 2 minutes.
I think like that's the most I've ever done. I could do a minute for sure.
For sure a minute.
I think today I could do a minute.
Do you think if me and you went into a free diving competition, which of us would win?
That's a great question. I don't know.
We'll have to later in the season finale.
Yeah,
we just got to find a really deep lake.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't have to be that deep. Yeah, it doesn't have to be that deep. We don't. Yeah. Well, the kiddie pool. We'll figure it out. The kiddie pool. Yeah. Well, moving on here. Let's move on to Friday, July 21st. The big premiere here. Two premieres, if you will. Let's talk about this one first because of alphabetical order. Barbie coming to theaters, Margot Robbie stars as one of the longest-running and most popular toys in all of human history. Is that safe to say?
Yes.
I'd say that's safe to say. This movie takes a look at Barbie and Ken's adventure into the real world. This movie looks pretty bonkers. It's kind of a musical. It's got a lot of dance choreography. It's got you've got Barbie in the Barbie world, and then they make their way. There's like a Matrix scene with Kate McKinnon where she's like, choose the red pill, but it's shoes.
Yeah.
It looks crazy, and it looks bonkers, but we've seen this sort of premise work before.
Yeah.
Like I said before, it does kind of have a Matrix-esque feel to it, and we've seen the Matrix work, but also I got a huge Lego movie vibe from this.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's very much like, okay, there's like these toys in the toy world, but they're being affected by the real world. How do you kind of break that? But also, it's sort of a fish out of water story because Barbie and Ken do make it into the real world. And it's like, well, what would happen if innocent Barbie made it to the real world? How would she survive? How would she adapt to something like that and everything? It does look like there's a lot of humor in here. I really like Greta Gerwig's work. Generally speaking, she's a great writer-director. She's probably, unfortunately, best known for starring in her ex-boyfriend's movies that don't paint her in good light, and that she's also like starring in half the time.
Yeah,
which I think is just a travesty because I think she's more talented. I'm not the biggest fan of Nolan Baumbach movies. If I'm going to be honest. So I think she's better. And the fact that White Noise movie that came out last year, and she had to like spout off that pretentious dialogue. And I'm just sitting there watching that movie. I'm like, you poor thing. You shouldn't be. You're better than this. Why are you doing this? You got Barbie coming up next year. Work on that. I don't know. What do you think? What do you think of this one?
I'm pumped to see it. I really like Margot Robbie. I like some of the other cast that's in this film. And like you said, I think it's going to be a good amount of adult jokes or jokes geared towards adults. I can't talk right now. I'm just so excited for the next movie. I think that's the real kicker.
Well, I hope you're excited for this movie because reportedly there's like 45 other movies they have planned.
Yeah. Yeah.
Marvel Cinematic Universe can suck it.
Yeah, they can. Yeah, they
45.
Got nothing on Mattel.
Yeah, basically they're trying to make all their Mattel properties into the Mattel, the new MCU, the Mattel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah,
it's
they'll be the MCU.
Yeah, or maybe they'll do the MCEU, the Mattel Cinematic Extended Universe. I don't know. But yeah, let's not waste any more time here. You're chomping at the bit. Let's move on. Oppenheimer premiering this weekend as well. At first I was thinking to myself, has there ever been two more polar opposite movies premiering in the same weekend? And there's been some similar scenarios, actually. Very more often than you'd think. So for context, Grease, we've talked about movie musicals here in the past. Barbie's kind of a movie musical. Yep. Premiered the same weekend as Jaws 2. Hocus Pocus premiered the same weekend as Free Willy, a dramatic movie, kind of a musical thing there. And a very similar situation to this weekend, a Christopher Nolan movie, The Dark Knight, premiered the same weekend as Mamma Mia.
There we go again.
Nolan loves his July premieres, so that actually makes a lot of sense. But this matchup that we see here isn't as weird as we thought it was.
No, and people are feeding into it.
Yes. At the beginning of this summer, if you had asked me what would be one of the better box office battles, I was thinking it was going to be this. But as we're getting closer and closer to the premiere, it's not so much which movie are fans going to decide to. It's really just more of a competition of, okay, which one are you seeing first?
Yeah.
Because we're going to see them both.
Yep.
These both movies have huge ensemble casts. They have huge set pieces. Very colorful in different ways, I might add.
Different ways.
One super dramatic, one super bright and fun, one is super almost depressing, but historically important.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you could pick two more polar opposite movies, and yet there's almost this unity we haven't seen in America in years.
Exactly. And I'm starting to see T-shirts that say Barbieheimer.
Yeah, there's movie posters that people are making where it's combined the two.
Yes, and it's like
Greta Gerwig and Christopher Nolan have united America, have united the world in ways that no one has in years.
Yes.
We did it. It's finally happened. only for the system to shut down due to the writer and actor
yeah.
strikes. So enjoy it while it lasts, America.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to last very long. But yeah, looking at this movie here more specifically, I'll go ahead and say this. I think this is one of the most important moments in worldwide history. The invention of the atomic bomb and Robert Oppenheimer and his team. It wasn't just him. It was the whole Manhattan Project.
Yeah.
Even though none of it ever took place in Manhattan.
They were
part of it took place in Chicago, and the other part was like in the desert.
Yeah,
I don't know. I guess they were just trying to trick people. I don't know. Anyways, and yeah, so the invention of the atomic bomb, we're still feeling the effects of it. Nuclear power, possible nuclear war, all this other stuff. Name me one invention that we've felt as much of an effect with.
Yeah. No, that's a great point.
Yeah. But that's not the only movie coming out this weekend. Surprisingly, there are a few more. One other one that we're going to talk about here, Cobweb, also coming to theaters. Another summer horror movie. We've been talking a lot about those here recently, and Insidious did pretty good, so maybe it's not as crazy as I thought. This one stars Lizzie Kaplan, and The Boys star Anthony Starr, which already makes his way more scarier.
Yes. And like watching the trailer, just seeing Homelander like without his powers, but still being
it makes him scarier.
Still being like a dick. Like
it makes him scarier.
Yeah, I can't wait. I like at first when I saw this, I was like, oh, okay. But then as soon as I saw him in there, I was like, yep, I can't wait to watch this movie.
Yep. Also, like I said, Lizzie Kaplan in this, mainly known more for comedy, trying her hand in horror movie here. After moving into their new house, the kid hears knocking noises all night, keeps him up, keeps telling his parents, I'm hearing these noises. They can't hear it. What's the origin of the noises? Is he making up is it just his active imagination? Is he having nightmares? Or is there something more sinister here? Why can't the parents hear it, man? We've all had that moment as a kid. We either hear or see something our parents can't hear. 99% of the time, it's our imaginations.
99%.
There's that one.
There's that 1%.
And then finally, coming to Netflix, they cloned Tyrone. This one, I feel like the best way to describe this one, in my opinion, is it's sort of Jordan Peele meets Spike Lee, because you have sort of that racial bias. What's the word I'm looking for here? The fighting racism sort of thing that Jordan Peele does. And not that Spike Lee doesn't do that as well, but Spike Lee adds way more humor into it. Jordan Peele has some humor, but there's like this creepy sci-fi element to it, whereas Spike Lee just kind of is like humorous with it. And that's his way of kind of showing it off and everything. It feels like this is kind of the perfect blend of the two directors, which, to be honest, those are two great directors to blend together.
Yeah.
Like, it works in this trailer, if you ask me. You got John Boyega and Jamie Foxx in this movie. They look comedic, and also it's kind of a scary situation. All of a sudden, these guys, they stumble upon some sort of conspiracy in their neighborhood where residents are being cloned by a secret organization. Why are they being cloned? Who's doing the cloning? All great questions. They try to figure it out.
And I'm excited to watch this because I like John Boyega as an actor. After I heard he was going to be in Star Wars, I watched Attack the Block. Awesome film. But I didn't think he got justice in Star Wars. He was nothing compared to what he could have been.
Yeah. And
I'm excited to see him in this role. He looks a little bit bigger, looks a little more meaner, looks awesome. And Jamie Foxx, I mean, and when he's talking, he's got his pimp voice or whatever. Oh, it's so great. I can't wait till I see this. Can't wait. So,
that's everything coming out here this weekend. A lot to choose from. Big weekend for movies. This weekend in July especially has always kind of been a big one. So no real surprise there. Well, that's going to do it for us here on this episode of Popcorn Bucket List. We got an interesting question for you out there. You brought this up. We talked earlier about Barbie, Oppenheimer in the competition here. Who sees what first? Let us know in the comments. Which one are you checking out first? Or are you only watching one?
Ooh.
Maybe. Whichever one you're going to watch first, let us know. Let us know what you think. All that fun stuff in the comments down below. Or let us know what other things you've been checking out as well. If you want some more of our movie recommendations, check out our display over at the Marshall Lyon County Library. You got a couple weeks left to see the patriotic movie lineup that we have there in honor of 4th of July, and also keep up with all these summer blockbusters. There's a lot to choose from here over at the Marshall 6 Theater here in Marshall, Minnesota. For myself and Ryan Meyerberg, we'd like to thank you so much for watching, and we will see you at the movies.